Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and today we are continuing our 32 for 32 series, going over team needs for all 32 NFL teams with a look at the Detroit Lions, who I understand everyone, not, the most competitive team year after year after year, but new regime, new quarterback, big trade, plenty to talk about, and have a great guest to help us do so. He covers the Lions for the Detroit News. Justin Rogers, you can find him on Twitter at Justin_Rogers. Justin, happy offseason, and thanks for the time, man.
Happy off season. It's been a busy one.
It has been a busy one, short and, sweet so far. And it's going to get much, much longer as we do at PFF. And as I'm sure you do as well as football, all 365 days a year. And we are pumped to continue to talk about it. So without further ado, let's get to Detroit Lions offseason. Justin, what are your three team needs that the Lions should be most focused on ahead of this offseason?
I can't say everything. I mean,
fair enough.
No, this is a team that really needs a lot. I think starting off, you look at the defense. It was the worst defense in franchise history in terms of yardage, in terms of points, in terms of the eye test. It was just an awful group. Looking at that unit, it's going to be a turnover with coaching staff, with players. But I think the first spot they really need to address on the defense is the linebacker position. They just haven't got the production out of that group. They've invested resources in it in terms of bringing in Jamie Collins in free agency, using high round draft picks and Jelani Tavai and Jared Davis, but the group has not been good enough. On the offensive side of the ball, it's wide receiver. They just don't have any under contract right now. It's Quintez Cephas, and Quintez Cephas is the wide receiver core right now. So Kenny Golladay is obviously the star there. He's a free agent. Talked to Dan Campbell the other day. There is interest in bringing him back. We don't know the cap space situation or whether that'll even be possible. But other than that, I think it's an area they need to really address in the draft. And then probably going back to the defense side of the ball, they probably need to do some more work on the defensive line. Edge rusher, defensive tackle, their best sacker last year was Romeo Okwara, hit double digits in sacks. He's a free agent as well. Again, that's another player they'd love to have back. He's young, just entering his prime, but this is a league that pays edge rushers. So, there's going to be some competition on the open market for him as well.
Great points all around. I did have linebacker highlighted. I mean, they had 5 dudes that played significant snaps last year, and none earned a PFF grade of more than 65. That's not great. We're talking about legit D territory there, and yes, pass rusher as well. Okudah, I know it wasn't, the best rookie year for him, particularly somebody you spent a top 5 pick on, but I feel like they have enough money already devoted to the secondary that, yes, prioritizing pass rush at this point makes more sense.
Yeah, Okudah is an interesting one. Obviously, a lot of rookie corners struggle. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. Some hit the ground running, but it's more unusual for that than for a guy to not have success. And I look at Okudah's rookie season. There was flashes in there, and then it comes out that he was dealing with a groin injury for quite some time. And he tried his best not to use it as an excuse, but he did also mention that he was struggling with hitting top speed and accelerating. And you cannot accelerate at the cornerback position, particularly with some of the guys he was having to cover early in the season with Julio and Hopkins. And I think Adams was in there. Like, it was just a gauntlet. So, you hope that was a good trial by fire learning experience for him, and that he can take those lumps and translate it into something more meaningful with a healthy body in his second season.
Really a hell of a division for number 1 rookie corner to have to deal with. Vikings, Jefferson and Thielen, obviously Devontae with the Packers, and Allen Robinson on the Bears. Lions, Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones to an extent too, had a couple of those wide receivers themselves, but to your point, only Quintez Cephas remains. Nothing even against Quintez Cephas, he's fine, but it confused me because they cut Marvin Hall like halfway through the year. I'm not saying he was a long-term answer, but what they at least told us was that, hey, they want to get younger, but then they signed Mohamed Sanu, and he ends up being in 3 wide receiver sets for the back half of the year. Do you think finally they're going to follow up on what they said, get younger and use some high-end picks? And I guess, what are your thoughts on the chances of Golladay and or Marvin Jones returning?
All right. I know the new general manager, Brad Holmes, is trying to classify this as a retooling and not a rebuilding, but it is a rebuild. I've always said, since I've covered this team, that the rebuild starts the day they trade Matthew Stafford. And once that happened, I know you got back a respectable quarterback in Jared Goff, and they believe that, there might be a ceiling there that hasn't been tapped, that, maybe he could be the answer for the franchise. But beyond that, like, you just look at this roster. They need youth. They need talent across the board. In terms of Golladay is an interesting one because he is a little bit older for a guy hitting his second contract, I believe 27. That does factor in your decision. If you don't believe you're going to be too competitive for 2 years, are you going to pay him that market rate, that $20 million a year that Keenan Allen got in terms of production? It's a tough decision. If I was to speculate based on all the factors, I'd probably say 70-30 Golladay is gone. Marvin Jones, it's probably closer to 90-10. That's a guy that's at the end of his career. He wants to win. He also wants to be part of an offense. He would be part of the offense here. He'd probably be the top receiver, but the odds of winning here are low. I think he's going to look to latch on with a contender that will give him the best opportunity to contribute within that realm of contending.
Yeah, it's too bad, man. Just kind of the way it worked out last year with Golladay only playing 5 games. Because that first half of 2019, when Bevel came and had Stafford throwing downfield, I mean, the offense looked electric. Too bad we didn't get to see it for a little bit longer. But you touched on quarterback. I want to talk about that more as we move on to our kind of gut feel round. We're recording this on February 2nd. This trade just happened, luckily, so we know that happened. But clearly, a lot more time in the offseason for things to change up. But just for right now, I want your gut feel on the following 5 things. First up, so Jared Goff, looking at the contract, seems like he's going to be on the roster for at least the next 2 years before they can do anything about it. Over under 16 total starts in a Lions uniform for Jared Goff.
Oh, I would say over. I mean, barring some kind of health issue, I think he's definitely the starter next year, would start all 16 games if he remains healthy. And then you look at that second season, I would put it at greater than 50% chance that he's here and he's the starter in that second season as well.
So do you even think they're going to try to really dress quarterback in the first 3 rounds, or is this going to be a thing where, hey, Goff, he's the guy for at least the next 24 months?
Again, we're still kind of learning this new front office and this new coaching staff, but you try to read the tea leaves and the quotes, and while they have left the door open, obviously, to dress quarterback early, I do not believe that's the case. I think Goff is their guy for 2021, and they will reassess where they're at, whether they have a high draft pick, whether it's theirs or somehow the Rams fall apart, or they can use those 2 to move up. But I think 2021 is where they'll seriously look at a quarterback if Goff doesn't grab the reins and take hold this year.
Yeah, the Rams talking about that trade have pretty much said that they don't, consider those lower round first round picks that different from a second, which is fine if it does end up being a lower round pick until we see a couple years later. Perhaps the Lions will get lucky with some of those picked towards the top of the draft. All right, so sticking with the offense, like you said, Golladay, Jones likely out of the picture. That means we're already getting some murmurs. One of my favorite offseason storylines every year is the running back is going to get more reps in the slot. D'Andre Swift has been one getting that already. So, whether or not that happens, okay, that's only for a few snaps a game. Just in terms of the total workload, though, do you see this offense truly featuring Swift as the every down RB that he pretty much flashed the ability to be at on several occasions last year?
I like to compare it to what New Orleans does with Kamara. I think he's clearly the lead dog down there. But if you look at the snap count totals for Kamara year to year, it's about 60%. And you look at Swift, very similar build, skill set. I don't want to compare him to, one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in the game. He's not there yet.
Combo, I think. Yeah.
But yeah, like that's the hopeful projection of what he can be, right? But he is on the slighter side of build, and you don't want to overwork that. So you're going to have a compliment there. I don't know what this new staff feels about Kerryon Johnson quite yet. I could absolutely see them just giving Brad Holmes' track record in Los Angeles and what they invested in running backs year after year in terms of a mid-round guy. I could see them bringing in a bigger guy, a north-south guy that kind of complements and can be that Mark Ingram or Latavius Murray in the New Orleans system to Swift. But you're probably going to look at a guy that's going to get about 60% of the snaps. He's obviously proved he can not just run outside the tackles, but between the tackles last year. And he is a quality receiver. I know he had some hiccups last year. I say this all the time. Rookies come in and they have this reputation of having great hands, and then those Matthew Stafford fastballs start coming at him, and they're just a different speed. And that's an adjustment, and he drops the one first game of the season, game winner. But he rebounded nicely. And the final stat line is nice. 10 total touchdowns, contributing in the receiving game, contributing in the run game. The Lions are all in on D'Andre Swift, and he can stay healthy. He's the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy you brought up that week one drop because after that, it seemed like so many wrote him off. And okay, he didn't do a ton over the next few weeks, but after that week 5 bye, I mean, I don't want to say he was the best rookie running back in the league, but he deserves to be in that conversation. He looked that good with the ball in his hands. And I don't think the Kamara, comparison is that out of the world. And they also, they both got the turf tape, they got a little swag in their game as well. I like that call. And yeah, even though, in fantasy land, we would love for our running backs to be on the field 80-90% of the time, I understand why NFL teams want to keep them fresh, not quite put that on his workload. So probably better for Swift's long-term future, even if not quite as many touches as some of us fantasy people out there would want. All right.
They can't all be James Robinson, right?
Exactly. So we got Swift there. Now T.J. Hawkinson, again, if Golladay and Jones are gone, we're expecting, pretty much a big usage bump. He's looked a part of, a young stud tight end, and even having Stafford under center, someone that really hasn't enabled high-end tight ends in the past. We could imagine a world where Hawkinson really even takes his game to new heights here in his third season. What is the expectation for T.J. Hawkinson entering 2021?
Darrell Bevell, I think, was a good offensive coordinator, but maybe one of the blind spots in his schematics was finding the usage of the tight end. And he really kind of had to force that in this year and find a better way to use Hockenson. And that showed up on tape. You saw a player that got physically better at what was demanded of him as well, both in blocking and pass catching. So it was just a nice second year bump that you want to see from a young player. And he really is young. He's on the young side of prospects coming out. So, I think it's completely reasonable to expect continued growth and giving what, the Lions are kind of setting up here with Campbell and bringing in Anthony Lynn. Like, the usage of the tight end is going to continue to be important in this more power-based offense. So, I think it's completely reasonable to expect continued growth from Hawkinson's game. I think the one thing he really needs to work on, and it may help with Goff, because if you look at Stafford, maybe the one thing that was a weakness in his game is he wasn't pinpoint accurate. He'd put it on you, but he wouldn't get you in stride. And for all of Goff's flaws, like his short area passing game is based on precision, and he'll hit you in stride. And you look at Hockenson, a lot of his catches last year, I would bet well over 50%, he was going to the ground catching the ball and losing all that yak yardage. So if you got a guy that can hit him in stride and keep him upright as he's coming on those drag routes or those crossers across the middle, there's potential there to take advantage of a skill set that's clearly there, because Hawkinson's athleticism is definitely plus for the position.
Yeah, and I mean, Goff, to your point, I mean, Robert Woods, Gerald Everett, Cooper Kupp, they have some of these guys that rank towards the top of their league in their yards after the catch ability. I understand Goff, when he's pressured, when he's not when things aren't wide open, it can get rough. But when things are right and you can just, tell him who to throw the ball to and he can get it there in rhythm, not many people throw a prettier ball. All right, switching over to defensive side, which we've talked about a little bit. And, you made the point where the cap room, it's a little bit up and down. They actually have the 8th most 2021 dollars devoted to the defense, and just via overthecap.com. I mean, Trey Flowers, Desmond Trufant, Jamie Collins, Justin Coleman, all these guys carry an 8-figure cap hit right now. Do you see them trying to ditch any of these big contracts? Or unfortunately, this is kind of the bed that they have to lie in after a pretty, what's the right word? Just overspending a lot in that 2020 offseason.
No, it's a great question. I think probably one of the biggest ones of the offseason is how are they going to retool this defense, beyond their belief that just new coaches will be able to make some tweaks to the scheme and maybe develop what those players are capable of doing in the scheme a little bit better. And I know they're making some changes. They're going to try to do more New Orleans secondary concepts, more quarters defense they didn't run last year up front. They're going to be trying to do more of what the Rams were doing under Staley. So a lot of those pieces do carry over. I think Trey Flowers is probably one of the safest ones, just because he's so fundamentally sound and schematically flexible. I do look in the secondary, and I wonder if one of Coleman or Trufant are, not long for this team. There is a little bit of flexibility there. They could get back with some cap space, and you can find maybe a quality nickel corner in the draft, in the mid round. So I wouldn't be surprised if they move on from one of them. I think the thing I expect the most is they're going to find a way to get Tracy Walker back on track. That was a player that was playing really well. We're talking PFF grades. His first 2 seasons were outstanding. They tried changing his role. They tried squeezing in Duron Harmon here last year, moved Walker into a different role, and it just bombed. It bombed, and that's the worst thing you want to do, is you want to derail a talented young player's development.
Yeah.
So, that's one thing I just absolutely expect from this Dan Campbell team is they're going to put Walker back in a position to succeed because it's one of their few bright young pieces.
All right, and we'll finish things off with Dan Campbell because, the dude broke Twitter when he gave just that press conference. Absolutely fantastic. I love the whole thing, biting kneecaps, all that. I will say, though, it's easy to be excited in February, less so when, this team who is rebuilding is probably going to have a rough start in the season. They gave him, I believe, 6-year contract. They're saying they're going to let it right out. Come on, though. Do you really think he has, over under 3.5 years, I guess would say, with the Lions?
Yeah, I think the 6 years was reflective of knowing Stafford was going and that they were going in this rebuild direction. This was a commitment to a long-term vision. 3.5 years is a really nice benchmark for discussion. I'm going to go over. I think, this goes probably at least through the full 4 seasons and we see where they're at there. They're trying something different for Detroit, at least. You look at all the different ways they've failed here with the different types of coaches and the one they really haven't brought in. And I thought it was going to be Robert Saleh for the same reason, that it was going to be a positive guy, an energetic guy, a Pete Carroll type that just threw the team on his back from an energy standpoint and carried them and elevated them and made them want to play. And Dan Campbell is that kind of guy. Players and even fellow coaches just love working with this guy. He's authentic. He's genuine. The passion is real. And, that can get you over some tough spots. And in the Lions case, we're talking tough 60 years. And so they're trying something different. I've had the chance to speak with them outside of that press conference. I know the 1 minute clip that you mentioned was everywhere, but he went 66 or 67 minutes during that press conference. He was there was just so much more to it, and the energy just never ceased. So I'm excited to see what he brings. I think curiosity has got me here. He's bringing in a staff that's full of just longtime NFL veterans. You're talking Staley, Brunell, Lynn, Aaron Glenn on the defense, who played 15 years and 3-time All-Pro. I don't know if there's a staff quite like this in the NFL that has all these experienced former players that willingly went back to the bottom of the coaching ranks and worked their way up. So they're trying something different here, and different is, quite frankly, good for an organization that's struggled the way they have.
And yeah, hopefully we do get those more than 3.5 years or so this different staff can try to help prove that it can work. And we saw the Vikings in these last, in the kind of Zimmer era, I think the Bills now and what they've been able to do, there's a lot to be said about giving your team the same coaches for 3-4 years, not forcing your young quarterback to learn a different scheme year in and year out. Some of the things the Browns have had to go through. So, Dan Campbell, new system, new guy. I get it. Give him a chance. We'll see what happens. So glad to hear that. All right, Justin, last thing, I will need your offseason bold call, and then we'll get you out of here.
Offseason bold call. Oh, I probably should have prepped when you sent me questions here. Man, my offseason bold call would have been they would have traded Stafford.
If you got a first round pick direction in mind, that'll work.
I think receivers definitely in play. You look at the defense, and the defense is definitely the bigger problem, but I think the value at the top of the round is wide receiver. And so if I was leaning anywhere right now with the 3 guys that are up there in Chase, Waddle, and Smith, I think one of those is probably the best solution for this franchise right now.
A number 7, perhaps Chase will fall, or one of the Bama guys, to your point. I like it.
You know what? I think they might trade down, to be honest with you. Pick up more picks. If you're not drafting a quarterback there and there's an opportunity to pick up an extra second rounder for a team that wants one, I think there's a really good shot that they didn't have. They had 5 picks heading into this draft. They picked up the 3rd rounder. So there's 6 now. When you're rebuilding, the more picks, the better. So I think there's a very good chance they trade down from number 7.
Yeah, particularly if, Fields one of those quarterbacks still hanging out there and someone wants to move up. Go get yourself, 6 picks in the top 100 now, let alone the entire draft. All right, I like that call a lot. Maybe even, if they stay put, Kyle Pitts. I'm trying to bring him up in every single team because I think he fits everywhere.
I think Lions fans would lose their mind if they take a 3rd tight end in the top 10.
I was about to say, it's not just Hawkinson. The losing their mind part would be when Jesse James is keeping one of those guys on the bench inevitably, but probably not going to happen there. Justin, thank you for your time, man. Everyone make sure you follow Justin on Twitter at Justin_Rogers. Got anything, let the people know where they can find you elsewhere?
No, I think that works. DetroitNews.com. That's That's the people that pay the bills.
There we go. Well, thank you, Justin. And thank you everyone out there for listening to this edition of the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. We'll be back soon with more goodness. So he's Justin, I'm Ian. Until next time, take care, everybody.